Welcome to my YouTube channel at Sci-Fi Tales Pools. Please subscribe, like, and share to support my channel. Queen Alina sat on the high throne, her eyes heavy with thought. The great hall was filled with whispers of lords and ladies, each one waiting for her to make a choice. They wanted her to marry. They wanted a king beside her, but her heart was not ready to give her freedom away. Every day she was reminded that her rule was questioned because she stood alone. Her advisors spoke again and again about duty. They told her that without a husband, the empire looked weak. They warned her that rivals were waiting and that her crown would be at risk. Alina listened, but her mind fought against them. She was strong, she was clever, and she had carried the weight of the empire without any man at her side. Still, the pressure grew. The nobles sent gifts, promises, and offers. None of them cared for her heart, only her crown. She saw through their smiles. She heard their hidden greed. She could not give herself to men who only wanted power. Her people needed her, and she would not let them down. Late one night, as she walked alone in the silent garden, a daring thought came to her. What if she gave the court what they wanted, but on her own terms? What if she brought forward a man, not of noble blood, but a soldier who owed nothing to politics? Someone who could stand by her side, if only in name, not a king, but a shield. She smiled to herself at the thought. The lords would see a husband, but she would keep her rule. The people would see strength, but she would not be bound to a stranger's will. It was a clever game, a balance of truth and falsehood. It was risky, but Alina was not afraid of risk. She called her guard and spoke of her plan. She ordered them to find a man from the army, someone brave, someone loyal, someone who would understand duty above all. Not a prince, not a nobleman, but a soldier who had known the hardships of battle. One who would not seek to rule but would stand beside her quietly. The guard bowed and promised to bring such a man. As Alina looked up at the stars above the palace towers, she felt a strange hope rising in her chest. She did not know what this choice would bring, but for the first time in many nights, she felt the weight of fear lift from her heart. Captain Luke Harrington was a man of the army, known for his steady hand and honest heart. He had fought in many battles, and his scars told stories of hardship and courage. He never dreamed of walking inside the royal palace, yet one morning he was called by the Queen's guard. The message was simple and strange. Queen herself wanted to see him. Luke felt uneasy as he followed the guard through long stone halls lit by golden lamps. He wore his plain uniform, and his boots echoed on the polished floor. He wondered why a queen would ever wish to meet a soldier like him. He had no family name, no land, and no title. He was only a man who had done his duty. When he entered the chamber, Queen Alina stood tall beside the great window. Her eyes studied him with calm strength. Luke bowed quickly, unsure of the proper way, and his words stumbled as he greeted her. To his surprise, she smiled softly, as if his plain manners pleased her more than noble speeches. She told him of her plan with clear words. She needed him to stand by her side, to act as her husband in the eyes of the court. Luke's heart raced at the request. He was a soldier, not a courtly man. He knew the nobles would mock him, and he feared he would bring shame to the queen. But as she spoke, he saw the weight she carried and the fire in her eyes. She trusted him, and that trust touched him deeply. He said yes, though his voice shook. He promised to obey and protect her role. Alina thanked him, her tone firm but kind. She told him there would be training, lessons in how to walk, how to speak, and how to sit beside her as if he belonged there. Luke agreed, though he felt like a stranger in this new world. The days that followed were full of practice. He struggled to bow with grace. He fumbled with the fine clothes they gave him. He often forgot the polished words of the court. The queen watched him with patience, sometimes amused, sometimes strict. Slowly she guided him, and slowly he began to learn. Though he stumbled often, Luke's honesty never failed. The servants whispered that the queen's choice was strange, but they also noticed the soldier's quiet dignity. And in the silence of the palace halls, a new bond began to form between the queen and the soldier who had been asked to pretend. The great hall was filled with bright candles and rows of noble faces. Queen Alina walked in with Luke by her side, dressed in fine clothes that still felt strange on him. Whispers moved across the room like a quiet storm. Many nobles lifted their brows. Some laughed behind their hands, and others stared with cold eyes. To them, he was just a soldier, a man too simple for the seat beside the queen. Luke felt their stares burn against his back, but he kept his steps steady. He remembered the queen's words from their practice. Walk with calm, keep your eyes forward, and do not fear their judgment. Why? So he did, though his hands clenched inside his sleeves. Alina moved with grace, her head high, her presence strong. She did not flinch when the nobles whispered. Instead, she let the silence of her poise answer for her. During the feast, questions were thrown at Luke. One lord asked about his family name. Another laughed and asked if he knew which fork to use. Luke answered plain and simple, saying he was born to no title, that he only knew the weight of a sword. Some nobles sneered, but others grew quiet. They could not break his steady honesty. The queen watched with careful eyes. Though Luke stumbled with the rules of court, he never bent his truth. His plain words cut sharper than the polished lies of the nobles. Alina felt a strange pride rise within her, as if this simple soldier was showing them something more noble than any crown. Servants began to notice too. They whispered in the halls that the soldier, though unpolished, carried himself with real courage. They told each other how he spoke with respect to all, high and low alike. In time, even some of the guards who first doubted him began to greet him with nods of respect. As the nights of ceremonies and councils went on, Luke and Alina stood side by side. He learned her signals, the small glance of her eyes or the shift of her hand that told him how to act. And she, in turn, began to trust his quiet presence. Together, they became a strange balance. She carried the crown, and he carried the shield of honesty. Though the nobles still whispered, a few began to wonder if the queen's choice was not as foolish as it first seemed. In the middle of games and lies, a soldier's truth was a rare and disarming weapon. The palace grew heavy with tension as weeks passed. Many lords could not accept the queen's choice. They gathered in secret rooms, speaking in low voices about how to ruin the soldier who now stood beside her. Their pride could not bear to see a common man share the queen's table. They whispered of plans, of tricks, and of ways to break him before all. Rumors began to spread through the city. Some said Luke was not loyal, that he sought to rise too high. Others claimed he had taken gold from the treasury. Though none of it was true, the word spread fast, carried by jealous lips. Soon, a false charge of treason was raised against him. The nobles demanded a council, hoping to see him fall in shame. On the day of judgment, the hall was crowded. Nobles waited with eager faces, ready to see the soldier cast down. Luke stood before them, calm but weary. He denied the lies with plain words, saying he had no wish for crowns or riches. Still the lords pressed harder, their voices sharp with anger. Queen Alina sat on her throne, her face strong, but her heart burning with fear for him. Then, before the trial could end, danger struck. A man hidden among the crowd drew a blade and rushed toward the queen. The hall filled with screams as chaos broke out. Guards were slow to move, but Luke was not. Without a thought, he threw himself between the queen and the attacker. The blade cut into his side, but he held the man back until guards seized him. Lena rose to her feet, her voice ringing out across the hall. She declared before all that the soldier had saved her life, that his loyalty was beyond question. Silence fell heavy as the nobles looked on. The man they had called unworthy had bled for their queen without hesitation. Luke was carried from the hall, his face pale, but his spirit unbroken. The false charges crumbled before the truth of his sacrifice. Those who had mocked him were left without words. In that moment, even the proudest lords could not deny the courage of the man they had tried to cast aside. And as Alina watched him taken away to be cared for, she felt a weight in her chest that was not fear, but something deeper. Something she had not expected when this game first began. Days turned into weeks as Luke lay recovering in a quiet chamber of the palace. The wound from the blade was deep, but his spirit held firm. Healers cared for him, and guards stood watch, no longer out of duty alone, but out of respect. The story of his courage had spread beyond the palace walls. In the streets, people spoke of the soldier who had shielded their queen with his own body. They began to call him protector. Queen Alina visited often, sometimes with words, sometimes in silence. She sat beside him, watching the steady rise of his breath, feeling a strange warmth in her heart. She had chosen him as part of a piece in her game of survival, but now she saw more. He was not just a shield to hide behind. He was a man of simple honor, and that honor had changed everything. When Luke was strong enough to walk again, a gathering was held. Nobles, soldiers, and citizens filled the great hall. The queen stood before them, her voice clear and steady. She told them of the day he saved her life, of how he had asked for nothing and yet gave all. She spoke of truth, saying that crowns and titles meant little without loyalty and sacrifice. Luke stood beside her, still pale but unbroken. The nobles who once mocked him now bowed their heads. The servants who once whispered now smiled with pride. The people cheered, their voices echoing through the hall. In that moment, the bond between queen and soldier was no longer a lie to fool the court. It was something real, something stronger than the schemes of rivals. Alina turned to him, her eyes soft yet firm. She said before all that, she would not call him pretender or play at husband any longer. She would call him partner, not by force, but by choice. The hall erupted with voices of approval, and the empire saw a queen who had chosen with her heart instead of her fear. As they stood together, Luke felt the weight of duty in a new way. He was still a soldier, but now he carried more than a sword. He carried the trust of a queen and the hope of a people. And Alina, who once feared losing her freedom, found that with him, she had gained something greater than power. She had found a bond that even crowns could not command. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.